Commission. Hang tight 1 second, Ron.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay. Calling the Resource Conservation Commission, March 11, 2024 meeting to order at approximately 6:33. Chris, do you want to be a timekeeper? Okay, great. Thank you. So Chris is the timekeeper. Anybody there in the audience for public appearance or non-agenda items?
No, sir.
All right. Move on to next item, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the draft minutes from February 12th, 2024 RCC meeting?
I would actually like to postpone the minutes to the April 14th meeting. They're a little bit different from what is on the website, on the OnBase website.
Yeah, so I can add some. So the minutes that are included in the packet, and Ben, I'm sorry I didn't communicate this with you. I got a note from Chad 7 or 10 days ago, somewhere in the last week plus, that he thought the minutes were a little bit too sparse, so I updated them, and what's online is the update, but that's not reflected in the packet. So, I mean, what is in the packet could be voted on, but it's not. Yeah, Gabriella's right. It doesn't match what was online, and I forgot to let you know that I had made that update.
Okay, so is there a motion then to, excuse me, to move the February 12th approval of the February 12th meeting minutes to May? We don't have to meet in April.
I'll move, and we do need a second, so.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Oh, excuse me.
I haven't seen what's been posted on our website, so I just saw the ones in the packet.
Scott, he's wondering about public Wi-Fi.
If there is no discussion, all in favor of moving the meeting discussion or approval of the meeting minutes, February 12th meeting minutes to May, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? None opposed?
Oh, just to clarify, Ron, I'm sorry. I was going to move them to April, but thank you for clarifying. I think my original motion.
Yeah, we don't have a meeting.
Right to May. Thank you.
This is a team effort.
Hi, this is Kim. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm
That's
here.
okay. We didn't know if it was you or not, so.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 4A under new business. Approval of the resolution.
Can I make a motion to move agenda item C up to now, just so we can get the administrator out of here?
Okay with me. Second motion?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion about it? All in favor?
Well, wait a second. Scott is also attending. We're bumping him.
No, Chad, no worries. Mr. Bretland can
Okay.
Hang on with the agenda. I'm fine.
Okay,
Thank
never
you,
mind.
Gabrielle. I'm fine. No worries.
Never mind. Thank you. Good point, Diane. Well taken. Thank you.
Okay, so just in terms of discussion, how come you wanted to move them up, Gabriella?
I just wasn't thinking about Scott being in there too. I just thought he was the one staff member that wasn't on the
No, I
meeting.
was wondering why you wanted to move it up on the agenda item. It's
Just to
part of
get Chad out of the
Okay.
meeting there, but Scott is also here, so I rescind my motion.
it. Okay, yeah, I didn't know who was going to speak to this, so, okay.
I have to rescind.
All in favor of moving it up?
No.
No, I
Oh,
rescind
no.
the motion.
There was no second on the motion.
There was a motion and there was a
It was
second,
rescinded.
wasn't there?
It was rescinded.
What's that?
The motion was rescinded.
Sorry, I rescinded the motion.
Oh, okay.
That's my fault.
Sorry, I didn't hear- I didn't
Sorry
hear
for the
that.
confusion.
So we're back to our original agenda. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I didn't hear the word rescind being rescinded. Right. So is there a motion out there to approve resolution R-33-24 amending the 2024 capital budget project fund budget?
I make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
for seconds. Okay, discussion? Phil, you want to provide us an update on this?
Yeah, so this is just we're drawing to the end of the saga involving our rooftop solar arrays, specifically the inverters that were out. We did get as I reported in either November or December, we did get a partial reimbursement from Huawei. There was a settlement, but it covered about $11,000, and the total cost to replace all of these solar panels will outpace that by I don't remember the exact cost right now. I think it's about 50,000. I don't have this in front of me. But we needed a budget amendment to approve amending the 24 capital projects fund to approve the spending for purchasing new inverters to replace the bad. So there's not really any new information in here. We're just looking to actually buy inverters that will work so we can get our solar arrays functional. And that's what this would approve.
This is just moving money from one pocket to another. Is that right?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this request is to, it's gonna be costing us what, another 41,000?
And sorry, I'm trying to pull up the packet right now to look at. I worked on this this item with Misty, so she was a little bit more on top of the specifics on where the money was coming from.
In the resolution, it says $46,441.
Okay, thanks.
It's moving from one CIP project to another.
Were you looking up something, Phil?
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the packet for some reason.
Okay.
There we go. The March one wasn't showing up for me. I can only get February. Did I look very confused? Because I was.
Are we ready to vote?
Oh, so no other discussion from Phil then?
No, and that pretty well covers it. There's a lot of details in the packet on stuff that I shared last year, the kilowatt hours that were lost from the arrays being out of service, the fact that we generate about $30,000 worth of electricity a year from our rooftop solar arrays, and with this costing us an additional 46,000, it should be under 2 years that this adds to our payback time. So originally we were looking at a 10 or 11 year payback on this 2017 rooftop project. This extends that maybe out to 13 years. The alternative,
on a couple.
right? The alternative would be not replacing these, and then we're only, I'm not sure. I guess we would look into a future year's budget to add this more in advance, but it just means that we're not generating that electricity for a longer period, and so we'll still end up making the purchase in the future. We're just missing out on another year plus of production.
Okay, so if we don't replace them, what would happen then?
If we don't replace them, then we would look to a future year's capital budget. We would have, right now, it's all 3 of the inverters on top of the library, as well as one in the Public Works building that are just non-functional. So the solar panels are working fine, but the inverters are what actually converts that from DC to AC so that we can use it in our buildings. Without the inverters, the electricity the panels are producing is worthless. It can't actually be utilized. So approving this, if council approves this, if we spend this money, we get new, then we go out for some bids and get new inverters installed to replace the bad ones. Otherwise, we'd kick the can down the road, and I'd look to put this into the CIP for 2025.
Okay. Is the city doing something to prevent something like this in the future, like particularly for the police building?
We have talked about what we can do to prevent this, and I mean, it's tough because none of us are experts on solar technology, and really what happened here was, we hope, a one-time thing. This had to do with a company that is based in a country that was sanctioned in a number of different ways by the US government. It's hard to anticipate, that was 5 years after the initial purchase. In the future, we can certainly avoid buying panels that are produced in other countries if we have a domestic one that's an option. I think in 2017, the 2 bids that we got, I don't know that either one was domestically produced. So we were kind of, I think it was going with a Chinese manufactured versus a European one. So, certainly we could look to prioritize American made, and that would help. We can't anticipate a company going under. That's always a risk. And, we can look into contracts and how we phrase things like warranties and guarantees in case a company goes under. But this was just such a unique situation that the company didn't even go under. They just left the US. And in theory, we could have pursued legal action because the product that we had was not delivering the expected service. But a 30,000 person city pursuing legal action against a foreign company at that point, they're not operating in the US anymore. So we're filing a lawsuit against a Chinese firm. It started to get really messy. I think the biggest, to condense it, I like to go off on tangents, as you know. To condense it, we can look at American made, and we can look at how we structure contracts. We're not ever probably perfectly protected, but that would help to anticipate problems.
Were these purchased under a grant?
These they were not purchased under a grant per se. We did receive some money from Focus on Energy. I think we did also receive some grant funding, but it was 10% of the entire purchase. It was a $400,000 project in total, and I think we got $40,000 in grants and rebates.
Okay, does it impact our grant funding that we got from them?
No.
Okay, so
there's no concerns there.
Okay,
Nope, that's all fine.
all right. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of approving resolution R-33-24, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed, ayes have it. Thank you, Phil. Moving on to agenda item 4B. Is there a motion to approve resolution R-24-24, approval of the 2024-2028 Parks and Open Space and Recreation Plan?
I'll move to approve.
I second.
I'll second.
Okay, second. Just get item for discussion.
I have a couple of questions for Scott. For Scott, this is an incredibly ambitious plan, and I know a lot of time has gone into this. Can you tell me, over the period of time that you're talking about, the number of parks that have increased, what has happened to park staff?
I can certainly talk about that, Diane. I actually have if you wouldn't mind, I could maybe walk through it a little bit for a second or two, and then that might answer some of the questions that we do have.
Okay, it's fine with me.
Yep, fine with me. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Certainly, I wanted to thank the RCC group to allow me to come in and talk about the plan. It's just a quick 5-minute or 6-minute kind of discussion regarding the plan. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Deanna Schmidt and Brad Sipple from the planning department. They're the two that really did the heavy lift on this plan. And I would refer to the memo that Brad put together. This is an update of a plan that was created for 2015 to 2020. And actually, if you remember, Wade Thompson was in the planning department at that point in time, and he did a kind of a restructure, a whole reboot of the plan when we did it in 2015, 2020. So this plan is really kind of an update. And to Diane's point, we'll talk a little bit about staffing and those kinds of things. But just to lay the predicate here, it's really just an update of the last plan. We did get some action items completed. We've added some. So this is really just kind of a summary of that. And what I like to do is kind of go through just a little bit, but certainly there's some goals and action items that potentially could relate to the Resource Conservation Committee. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of those. And certainly if you've got any comments to add, I'm going to be kind of going through the different committees this coming month to grab any feedback that you may have. And then if I could go to Brad's memo, which kind of states it is an update of the 2015-2020 plan. And it does need to be stated that the plan is really an action document. It's a living document. There's certainly some action items in the plan that are going to need some further refinement in those getting into the details of the parkland dedication fee or those kinds of things. So this document really doesn't address those specific action items. They just mentioned them in summary. The plan, maybe just a couple things that you mentioned, Diane. We did, since the last time we did the plan, which was in 2015, we added 30 different park properties, which is really a kind of an indication of the growth of the community. We did add Southdale neighborhood and Southdale Park to the city as part of the taking in the town of Madison. We are currently working on a hub on Traceway, on North Fish Hatchery Road hub on Traceway, and then we also added a Terra Vista Agricultural Park. So just a couple of the highlights. The plan is...
Hey, Scott?
Yes.
Scott, what's an agricultural park?
Well, it's one of the theme parks, and really one of the big items that Way created in 2015 to 2020 was to create a special use park. So all of our community parks, in theory, should have a specific function. McKee Farms Park is kind of the activity. McGaw Park is kind of McKee is the festival grounds. McGaw is kind of our athletic facilities, and then Terra Vista was going to be more of the agricultural park. If you're familiar with the area that we're looking at, this was an area that was farmed by the Hmong community a while back. So that was really the idea of trying to create the community or garden type of theme park within our community. The dog park is another community park, so that's kind of identified with the dogs for the community, and then the golf course, that's another community park. So it really has specialized kinds of uses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The plan does have 3 sections. It's an executive summary. Is one piece, which really kind of is it's a summary of the plan. The middle part, which is the existing conditions, is all the different parks, their description, their acreage, those kinds of things. And then the meat of the plan is really the action items at the back, which I'd like to go through. But before I did that, I do have a handout that I can hand out to, is it Tim? Jim. Hand out to Jim, but then I'll get it to you, Phil, and Ben, and ask to distribute it. But it's basically a host report of our department, which lists the staffing. One big addition for the staffing is that the city forester naturalist, Anna Healy, went to a full-time position, so that was one additional staffing. It does also include some budget information. And what I wanted to draw attention to it was the revenues that are collected from the department, which is basically the recreation department for recreational fees, park rental fees, community center rental fees, and all of those. In 2019, the group, we brought in $259,944 in revenues, and those are really dollars that people decide that they want to rent a facility or they want to participate in a program. Then COVID hit in 2020, and it was down to $69,905. But I am here to report that in 2023, it's back up to $269,925 from last year. So we've really gotten to the post-COVID numbers and actually a little bit larger than they were in 2019. One other item that I've identified in here is that the number of trees that were planted in 2023, which was 401, just to give you a perspective on that. And then to your point, in 2015, the plan had 519.8 acres. But now in this current plan, we've got 788 acres. And so that too is an indication of the growth of the Parks Department. And I think at the end of the day, the interest of the community within, for the different parks. Then if we go to the the action item portion of the plan, that does include, let me just read it for you, a little bit of a framework. Recreation in public spaces can take many different forms. Conventional forms include basketball, volleyball courts, baseball, play equipment, natural activities such as walking and hiking. These conventional forms will always have a place in public parks. This section of the plan looks beyond these conventional forms and looks to recreation, public spaces through the following framework. We actually called it the 3 S's. The first one is sociable, which if you think of people, parks provide location.
Sorry, what page are you on?
Oh, mercy, that. Well, it's page 4 that I've got here, but I don't think it's page 4 in the packet. If anyone could help me on that,
That's fine.
it's the action items. It's towards the end of the document. But then we talk about sociable, which parks provide the sociable locations for people to gather. They also provide solitude, which if you think of nature, they have trails and woodlots and those types of things. Also scenes, that we think about transportation and trails and all of those kinds of networks. The vision, if you look at the top of the next page, we do have a vision statement. And what I did highlight was the last end of that vision statement, which I think refers to the RCC, preservation and sustainable stewardship of the city's natural environment and resources. So that's included in our vision statement for our department. A couple of the goals, if you go down to goal number 2, protect Fitchburg natural, cultural, and historical resources. Goal number 4, integrate Fitchburg Park open space and rec land to use the facilities therein with a comprehensive citywide trail path system. But then it does mention stormwater management system, tree canopy, and environmentally sensitive areas. And what we are finding, or what we do find, that a lot of the parks do provide the stormwater facilities for the community. So to integrate the stormwater facility with the parks, we think is really important, and it becomes, not just a function of the park, but an attraction to the park. And then goal 6, manage Fitchburg Park open space, recreational lands in an efficient and sustainable manner that optimizes benefit and minimizes cost. And then actually, if you go to the, there's another page which kind of talks about action items. Action item number 8, design, landscape, maintain and manage city systems. That as I see relates to the RCC in trying to encourage sustainable types of landscapes and design. Number 10, maintain and enhance the city's tree canopy, forest, and prairies. And number 11, maintain and enhance the city's stormwater facilities and waterways. So I guess at the end of the day, I wanted to come before the group and kind of share the park and open space plan. Certainly, Diane, you mentioned it, the growth in the park system is really evident. But certainly, I think we've looked at the parks in a different light, if you would. They not only provide those active kinds of recreational spaces, but also provide other natural and community type gathering locations. So And while,
Scott?
one last thing, I do have sorry, Diane, the parkland dedication, ordinances, parkland dedication and parkland improvement fees, which are related to our department, which I'll send off to everybody. So yes. Thank you.
Scott, does that, the paperwork that you're sending, does that include headcount changes?
Well,
Because so far you won't,
it includes the current staffing, Diane. I could certainly look back to find out what the staffing was in 2015 when we did it originally, if that would
Okay.
be helpful.
then I have a couple of, I mean, that's not really RCC related, but these questions are, as you know, the city has several sustainability pledges that they've committed to. And so I'm just wondering, going forward, when you're establishing parks or when you're replacing lights, are you considering solar lights, solar lighting, and same thing with shelters, using solar for lighting at shelters and in restrooms? And I realize this is a three-part question. And also, we're working on a dark sky ordinance. So is the Parks Department keeping all of those things in mind when they plan a park or plan replacements?
Absolutely, Diane. You know, and one of the specific parks that we're working on right now is Tower Hill Park, where we're looking to renovate the shelter. And we did, you know, speak with Phil about the idea of placing solar arrays at the park, but I think we came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be practical. But to your point, exactly, those are things that we want to take under consideration when we're building new parks and new facilities. That's where I will state too, the Stoner Prairie Park Plan, which is a new park plan. What we're doing is we're doing a lot of prairie plantings instead of the grass to kind of work on sustainability and investment in the environment, those kinds of things. Certainly at Fahey Fields, we're going to be doing the additional pickleball courts, which will be lit. So we'll keep that dark sky a theme in mind when we figure out what type of lighting we're going to be placing there.
And also solar, that's a perfect exposure for solar. But don't you think that both of those, dark sky and solar, should be incorporated into this plan?
What was that, Diane?
Don't you think that both solar lighting and dark sky lighting should be incorporated into this plan?
Certainly, what I'll do is I'll gather, and hopefully whoever's taken minutes can provide that as an amendment suggestion by the RCC. And then what I'll do is I'll gather all of those and take them to Brad and Deanna and see where we might be able to insert that.
Well, if we want that to happen, we have to make a motion. So.
What did you say, Ron?
What's that?
I didn't hear you.
I said, if we want that to happen in the minutes, we have to make a motion that we recommend something to be recorded.
Well, I can make a note. No worries. I'll write that down.
My other question, and I don't mean to monopolize this, I only have two other ones, but I was surprised to see the community center listed as a park.
Well, the community center is, you know, the definition of parks are pretty liberal. So, you know, places where people gather and rental facilities. I would see the community center, and certainly, you know, there's grass and areas for people to stop and sit and those kinds of things.
Okay, then finally, when I said it was ambitious, I mean it was ambitious and being very comprehensive, but I was really surprised to see that some of the amenities that you want to include even at the neighborhood parks would be drinking fountains. I mean, those parks are like in the center of a neighborhood. That seems like an expensive inclusion.
Well, and we do have a lot of them out there, but I think, you know, that's kind of I would view that as something that the residents who live in that neighborhood would appreciate that there is a drinking fountain there. And what we do when a new development comes in and a neighborhood park is developed, there is a park improvement fee, which goes to purchase those, those types of amenities, first off. So I think it is a good piece of the neighborhood park.
And I have a suggestion, and I'm not asking that it be considered, but I'm working with the Department of Energy on community geothermal initiatives across the United States. And my opinion is in the future, certain public parks might be considered for community geothermal when they're next to an apartment complex for low income or public buildings where we do public-private partnerships using the space that's available, and we can add use density. Once you install geothermal exchange, it's out of the way. And so considerations, this is the future of renewable clean energy, is possibly looking at something like this for an appropriate park facility. And I will say that I'm working with the city of Madison. Brittingham Park is being considered for a geothermal exchange field for geothermal exchange for the triangle low-income residential redevelopment. So other nearby cities are considering public open space to be used in a sustainable resource manner. And like I said, I'm not asking that be considered into this, but I think in the future we should keep this on our radar and see if it makes sense at some point.
Well, and I tell you, Jim, if I might, we're always looking for additional ways to fund maintenance and those kinds of things. Typically, we don't sell park property currently or charge rent or those types of things, but I like that as a potential creative way to potentially generate some revenue. Say nothing about being
It is out there where you actually operate as a quasi-utility for heat and cooling, but it's a developing topic, and I think it's of interest.
Appreciate it.
I think it's an excellent idea, and I'd like to see that also included in this plan, because this plan won't be updated again for what, 10 years?
5 years. Well, this last one took a bit, but they're supposed to be updated every 5 years. We had transition in the planning department, so we didn't quite get it done, but they're typically a 5-year plan. And I should mention too that these plans provide, it's one of the requirements if you're looking to apply for federal or state funds, you need to have a park plan in order to participate in that grant program.
So if we do a recommendation, it wouldn't have to be anything more detailed than what's included for solar. So it says solar power generating infrastructure will be reviewed for specific park locations. We could just recommend that be amended for geothermal exchange opportunities be reviewed for specific park locations and opportunities.
I agree. I think I like that. Do we need a motion for that?
Let's do that.
I make a motion that the plan include a statement that geothermal exchange infrastructure be reviewed for specific park locations.
I second.
Second.
Is that just specifically for geothermal? Read that again.
It looks like it's on item 10G, which is on page
10G.
Like- page 90 of our packet, of the resource conservation packet.
Page what, 90?
I can amend
Page
my
90 of the
motion.
ARC packet and 11 of the Parks and Open Space Plan, it looks like. Because that's the specific, it says solar power generating infrastructure will be reviewed for specific park locations. I think, Jim, what you're talking about is adding solar power and geothermal. Solar and
This
geothermal power generating
statement-
infrastructure,
it's-
basically.
That statement is specific to tree canopy, but I can amend the motion that we include a statement or a part sub H that geothermal exchange infrastructure be reviewed for specific park locations in concert with the tree canopy. That's the end of my motion. My statement is you can't place it underneath trees and similar. It has to be open area. So that would make sense as a sub H in that part of the plan.
So can we have a rewording of that motion?
Yes, I make a motion that in part 10 of the
That's action item 10.
action item 10 include part H, that geothermal exchange infrastructure be reviewed for specific park locations with respect to community geothermal opportunities. Period.
Okay, did you get that, Phil?
I did. Thanks for
Okay.
restating that, Jim. I needed it.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Did you include the tree canopy part, Jim?
That's a separate one.
So that's part of 10G already. So
Yeah.
so right now,
But it both,
I stated the motion as I think it should be written.
okay.
So was there a second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor of making the motion?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not opposed? Motion passes. There'll be an recommendation to update, action item 10.
Thanks, Jim. That's a good idea. I think it positions us well for potential grant opportunities that are coming down the line, and I think it's kind of a unique thing to have in our plan and could position us well.
just if I can clarify, point of order, did that vote cover the amendment only or approving the resolution with that amendment added?
Amendment only.
Okay, thank you.
Amendment only.
Any other discussion on the resolution? If no further discussion, all in favor of approving the resolution R-24-24? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Not opposed, the motion passes. The resolution passes.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, we can move on to agenda item 4C, overview of the City of Fitchburg Committee and Commission's Board and Staff Guide. Like we're actually ahead of schedule.
Good evening,
Time
everyone.
is until now. Yeah.
My name is Chad Brecklin. It's good to see some familiar faces. And for those of you that don't know, I'm the city administrator here for Fitchburg, and have been in this role just about 3 years now, and with the city almost 25 years overall. So I wanted to have some conversation or offer myself for conversation in regards to the recently provided guidelines for city staff related to committees, commissions, and boards. I think that there have been some questions that have been generated for Phil and or Ben during last month's meeting, in which we had hoped to have this topic on the agenda and unfortunately didn't make it. So we're having conversation this evening on it. But I do want to at least give a little bit of background as to where this particular document came from. And one of the things that I've noticed since I've been in this role is that we were lacking in guidance to provide to our staff who are serving as staff contacts And that was really suffering due to staff turnover in a variety of different roles. And that loss of information and kind of institutional knowledge, so to speak, had gone away. So this was one of those opportunities that we saw as city leadership to provide guidance that appeared to be lacking for our staff here in the city of Fitchburg. And of course, one of the main goals of the entire document is to provide consistency to the best extent that we can across the city's nearly 30 boards, committees, and commissions. So that's kind of the backstory behind the document. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to take a look at it since it was added to the agenda. I'm happy to talk about it in more detail and answer any questions, but I'll just defer to the committee as to what you'd like to hear further and or any questions you may have.
I have a question. So is it, we were last month, we were told only formal motions would be recorded in the minutes. But we made, like last month, we made several decisions, none of which were included in the draft minutes that were circulated. So shouldn't the minutes also include decisions made by committees?
So that is a great question. And what staff has been instructed to do is generally speaking, follow the minutes as the example from the committee of the whole and the common council. That is obviously our policy-making body. And as was previously mentioned in this meeting, the February minutes were lacking from the guidance that had been provided. And we have gone and updated those particular minutes to better reflect some of the discussion that had taken place. So, for instance, when you see committee meeting minutes in particular, where oftentimes there are presentations presented to the Common Council to provide them additional information on things, oftentimes the minutes reflect that there was a presentation provided to Common Council on street resurfacing projects for 2024. And that presentation was by, say the engineering team, and we'll list those specific individuals. So that's something that we do see in the meeting minutes so that everybody has an idea of what's contained or what was discussed during that meeting. We do want to focus it on high level things like what was the topic of discussion, not necessarily what was the back and forth related to the discussion and who said what. And so forth. That is not the intent of meeting minutes in accordance with not only the staff contact guidelines, but also guidelines via state statute that have been disseminated through the UW Extension local government center as well.
I have something to add.
Could I just get clarification, Brad? I'm sorry, Chad, because I don't think. Did you say that if we make decisions that should be included in the minutes, or do we have to formally make a motion to get that in the minutes?
So can I just add a little clarity for Chad, because he hasn't been sitting in on these meetings. One of the things that came up, and I'm pulling up at Gabriella's request, the minutes that I updated for on base per Chad's request. One of the things that came up last, oh, sorry, these might still be the wrong ones. I'll stop sharing for a minute until I can find the correct ones. That came up last month was the RCC does a number of things, makes decisions that are not reflected through formal actions and votes. So a lot of action items. This person will reach out to MG&E to hold a discussion. This person is going to follow up with such and such staff member. So action items for RCC members to follow up on. And there was kind of a question of whether those need to be recorded in the official minutes, or if a member of RCC should be taking notes on those instead and distribute them separately from the minutes. My understanding from the staff guidance was that because those aren't official actions, it's more kind of the breadth of the discussion, that those would make more sense in notes separate from the minutes. But that was a question that wasn't really resolved last month.
So Phil, I can, while you look for the updated February minutes to show the commission here. Phil is correct that discussion related to or decisions related to, who's going to follow up on what or who's leading what initiative is not something that is recommended to be in meeting minutes. That is something that the commission is encouraged to keep track of through either designating a note taker or a volunteer perhaps that's willing to do that, perhaps even alternating that responsibility if that is something the commission would like to do, to create a more detailed record of who's following up or otherwise responsible for projects and initiatives that the commission might be working on. But by and large, the legal recommendations from the UW extension is that the minutes should really focus on what the body did, not necessarily what was said. So that really is focusing on the actions taken by the body in relation to resolutions that were there, or other things that were agended, such as, using this particular minutes as an example. You could look at the curbside recycling and drop-off site update. That is something that is appropriate to put in the minute. There was a topic on that, and you can see what was covered in high-level general terms. So those are the sorts of things that certainly should be included so that not only the commission, but the members of the public have an idea of what at least the topic of a discussion was.
Actually, if I could just interrupt, Phil, what you were talking about is not what I was asking about. But since you have this draft up on this curbside recycling and drop-off site update, we actually made decisions on what to do going forward regarding the excessive amount of cardboard dropped off at that site. I would expect that to be in the minutes. We also had a discussion on and made a decision regarding curbside overflow recycling. And that's not in the minutes, at least I don't see that here. And we selected our waterway cleanup date, and that wasn't in the minutes. Aren't those things that should be in the minutes?
So
aren't those activities that should be recorded?
Gabrielle,
I was taking, sorry, go ahead.
I actually, I wanted to share one thing. I think, like Diane, it's interesting that you bring this up because I was having a conversation with somebody over email about the minutes as well, and it brought something up that when you're making like the thing that I think that it comes down to for me is it's like things have to be agenda'd so that people from the public can come and comment on it. So like RCC can have a discussion where we come to a consensus about what would be the best way to move forward, but we can't like really say that we made a final decision about the cardboard recycling, process, because that would have to be like something that would be agenda'd for discussion, if you know what I mean. So like while we can come to a general consensus of what we think is potentially the good right move and like talk about what next steps could be, it's not really an official item because the body doesn't have authority to make that final decision in that agenda item. Like that would have to come back as something more official.
But we have to make, we do, I mean, are you saying that the agenda item was just worded incorrectly? Because we do make recommendations to council, and we did come up with a plan for Ben to move forward.
And I think when recommendations are presented for council, Gabriella does bring those up to council in their meeting. So they're not papered over, but they're not a recommendation as part of a discussion is not the same as a formal action from a body. And
It
so
doesn't
that's
say,
kind of the
it doesn't,
distinction.
minutes don't have to be, I mean, I'm looking at the definition of minutes. They're supposed to be motions proposed or voted on and activities undertaken. And that's an activity that, I mean, we spent a long time discussing that. We have no record of it. We have no reference.
And that's why we are encouraging notes to be taken. That is a common practice. I know both of the committees that I've volunteered on, I take my own notes because even when I was taking more detailed notes, there were questions about whether what I had captured reflected the full discussion. There's always going to be a difference of opinion on what the most important content there was. And so absolutely it's, if you want to remember certain things from a discussion, I think individually any person in the committee should probably be taking notes so that they can refer back to those.
What about the public looking at these minutes? And let me back up. several years when a council member accused RCC of trying to circumvent council. Now, these kind of minutes would certainly lend that as a possibility, because you can't, the description under C says nothing. That's not any more than the agenda item.
So to build upon what Gabriella had said, or Alda Gerhard, I'm sorry, that in the case of curbside recycling and drop off, to continue to use that as an example, it doesn't appear as though that was a discussion related topic. And therefore, as a discussion related topic, you know, it's again, high level indication of what was discussed. And ultimately the avenue available for a recommendation from RCC in this case would be is when the resolution comes to RCC for a contract with a particular vendor, that would be the venue in which a formal recommendation from RCC would be made and then forwarded or reflected in the minutes, and then also carried through by your ALDA representative to council. In some cases, there may be even a situation where you may amend a resolution through motion and ultimate approval. And again, that amendment would be written within the minutes and then also conveyed to council, not only through the minutes and the referral sheet, but also by your ALDA representative.
Well, when we come to do this in July or August, when the RFP is, if the RFP is sent out for refuse and recycling, we have nothing to refer to. And I'm not just talking about me personally, I'm talking about staff. I mean, some of the things that we've had to follow up on, staff has not kept notes to do. So, I mean, I consider it, and I can't see all of the minutes that have been updated from February, but what was included in our packet is absolutely useless.
So it is also important to note that staff direction comes from the Common Council, the mayor, or the city administrator. So while we obviously encourage staff to be helpful and take care of those things that are they're able to take care of, at the end of the day, commissions and boards in the vast majority of situations do not have the authority to direct staff.
One other thing, you mentioned that the minutes should somewhat parallel what the Committee of the Whole does. The Committee of the Whole in their meetings, they don't make decisions. So their minutes would have nothing. And in the Common Council, everything they do is a formal motion. So, I mean, we're considerably different from that. And every committee is different from that.
So if we use the Committee of the Whole as an example, oftentimes you'll see that there's quite a bit of back and forth conversation and discussion in those meetings. Various alders will weigh in with their opinions. They may even ultimately direct staff on a direction in which they would prefer to see things go. And those things don't necessarily, they don't make the minutes. I mean, there's not a point by point conversation or listing of the conversation amongst alders or the statements that they made, or ultimately even the direction that they may have provided staff. An example of that is if you look at the committees of the whole recently, where we've been talking about referendum in the Committee of the Whole, where staff has been seeking direction from the council on the things that they may wish to see included in the referendum, and or dollar amounts associated with the potential referendum that the city council may consider. That information wasn't ultimately reported in the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting. The topic of discussion was listed, and then of course the minutes were generated, and then obviously there is additional record available through the recordings of the minutes if there are meetings, if there's ever questions.
What
The
about
other
the,
thing
what
I
about,
want to jump in here as well, because like I think the cardboard example is quite a good example, Diane, actually, because when like if I look back on that meeting, my interpretation of the conversation was not that we came to a solid decision, but that we had a really productive conversation that brought us closer to understanding where, like, what the city, the things that the city should be thinking about as options for moving forward. I guess if you, and that was reflected in how I summarized that for the council when I came back and talked in my RCC report. I guess my interpretation was not that we made a decision, it was that we had a really productive conversation. And so I think that illustrates just how complicated minutes for discussion-based items can be, because a summary of a discussion is an opinion, essentially, because there is no specific action taken. So any person's summary of a discussion is probably going to be different, and sometimes can be significantly different because people have different interpretations and opinions about what happened. I think it does become, the more I think about this, when I was having a conversation with somebody, it hadn't really dawned on me until now. They were talking about how important the referendum and the police facility discussions at committee of the whole were, and how that should be reflected in the minutes. And while theoretically I agree, I just think about how it would be impossible to summarize that in a way that wouldn't be establishing an opinion about that. Like this. So
Actually,
I guess
Gabriella, that's a perfect example, because your understanding of what we discussed and mine are not the same. And the only way to resolve that is to listen to a 2.5-hour meeting, which is absolutely absurd. But that's why we vote. That's why we vote to approve the minutes. So if Phil put something down that you didn't agree with, or that I didn't agree with, we get it corrected. But right now, we don't know what happened. This is the same thing that happened in January with the $2.5 million sustainability budget. Nobody could remember what we decided, and that wasn't in the minutes.
Well,
and that was a recommendation to council.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you there again, Diane, because it's not watching a 2.5-hour meeting. You only have to watch the agenda item at stake. And while I, like, in terms of like that, the police facility, for example, when I reported back to the council based on my notes that I took, I listed out exactly what the recommendation was. And that was the recommendation that was carried forward by the architect to the council discussion for what the sustainability features would be within that 2.5 million. So that conversation was reflected in the ultimate outcome. Like the Alder representative, I think, has a real responsibility to be the person that's bringing forward those recommendations to the council whenever those things arise. And that's what I see my role is, as being an Alder representative, is making sure that that information that I think is relevant to council decisions makes it back to the council. I can't say that every Alder always has done that in the past, either with this committee or other committees. That's very dependent on what the Alder chooses to do. But I do think that that is part of the process of relaying information.
So is our waterway cleanup date included in these minutes?
When we choose event dates, those should be acted on by staff. So the waterway cleanup date, that's advertised online. When we choose a shred and recycling event date, we advertise those online. And my understanding is that the public is looking to the city's website and not to RCC minutes for event dates anyways.
And I share those in council as well. I share the dates in council. I repetitively share them every time I have a chance to.
So we're not including that in the minutes either.
Correct.
So somebody like Kim, who missed the last meeting, has to listen to the whole 2.5-hour meeting to find out what, I mean, there's no nutshell version for her.
Or either notes could be distributed to the RCC by somebody, or Kim could reach out to anyone and ask. There are other methods for distributing that information.
You're pushing more work onto volunteers.
With regard to the note taker, is that something that's part of the public record?
No, if there's a commission member who's taking more detailed notes, that would not be included as part of the minutes as public or official record of the meeting minutes. So, I mean, I a change from past practice that have been conducted, CC, and also perhaps other committees and commissions. So that's certainly not lost in this conversation, that this is a notable change from what had been occurring. And I recognize that everyone here is a volunteer, and you know, giving their time to make the city of Fitchburg, you know, perhaps a better place to live, work, play, visit, whatever the case may be. And you know, we're not trying to push work, if you will, onto others at all. We're really trying to search for consistency, and we're also trying to have make the best use of the available staff capacity that we have. I know, you know, just thinking about Phil in particular, He staffs not only this committee, but one other committee, plus, just his day-to-day responsibilities, along with other projects such as, updating the city's actually not updating, but, working to create the city's sustainability plan. He's also obviously leading our solar and other sustainability initiatives and managing, as you can see, some repairs that are associated with the city's solar arrays on a couple of its facilities, trying to keep tabs on and the system that's reporting that information up and running. It's working on an update to the bike and pedestrian plan. And, he's also been tasked with researching grant opportunities and other things related to the sustainability measures in the police services facility. So we're really trying to balance all of the competing responsibilities and tasks that our team has. And again, I acknowledge that this is a change, and I recognize that it may not be viewed positively, but I do hope that folks understand at least the basis for seeking the consistency amongst committees and commissions in alignment with council and committee of the whole, and also to best utilize the limited staff capacity that we have.
I'm not asking for I'm not asking for a dissertation. We had December minutes that were brief and that were helpful for reference. And I'm also not going to go into what I have to do on a daily basis or a monthly basis or a yearly basis. I mean, we all have full calendars too. I think that's very insensitive.
So Chad, thanks for coming in tonight and explaining it. So I'm the vice chair of RCC, and so as part of this process that we've gone through, kind of the nuts and bolts of us being an active commission in Fitchburg is to have our action items and document those and then conduct some follow-ups. So, we've kind of developed this role for me to be following up on these action items. This is something, as a past chair that I used to do. I'd use the meeting minutes that at that time had the action items in them and could follow up. So now during a meeting, I'm recording the action items. I'm going to send those out to the commissioners, and each time, and I do this anytime I send an email out, I say, don't respond all to this, so we don't have a walking quorum. So people can respond individually to me about questions they have related to those action items if they respond individually to me, correct? Is that acceptable?
Oh yeah, they can certainly respond to you and ask any questions. And, I don't necessarily see any issue with potentially, obviously this is a call for the chair of the committee, but, having an agenda item where, you talk about updates from and activities, which I think you already do have on your agendas typically, where you could review, what was discussed at the previous meeting and or ask for updates related to who was following up on what. I think those are all appropriate things that you can do.
Chris, would those notes be shared with the city staff as well, along with the commissioners, the action item list?
Yeah, I mean, because, sometimes our action items include an action item for Ben or for Phil. And so, my plan would be to share those with Ben and Phil. And, just like other commissioners or Gabriella, they would have the opportunity to follow up with me individually if they have a question about their item. Likewise, my plan, once we get the rhythm of this going, I can't say my minutes and my action items will be perfect every time. As we've talked about, it is an interpretation, and I'm kind of developing the systems for this to be efficient for me to do during the course of the meetings. But there will be a little bit of follow-up time, on the action items, and I'm okay with that. I just wanted to make sure that the way I described it to you seems like an acceptable means for us to carry on with having our action items, because we've been kind of struggling with this over the past year, and we've dropped some balls we normally don't drop as a commission, and this is the the action that we're taking to try to remedy and respect the change that has been made and move forward.
Chris, I wonder if we need to add a little rigidity to that approach, that say like after 5 days after we have our meeting, that you would send out the list of action items to everyone.
Yeah, I think we can target 5 days. My goal will be to send it out after the meeting's over.
I mean, it's flexible for you because you're the one going to be doing it. So 5 days, 10 days, whatever you feel comfortable.
Well, I mean,
but we know, hey, in the 5 days, Chris is going to be sending something to us.
Right. I know for me, with the number of things I have going on, if I don't send it out within the hour after the meeting, then it's probably, it'll be a struggle to get it out in the next 5 days. So my goal is to send it out and do it during the course of the meetings and send it out, closely thereafter.
Okay.
Yeah, and just, looking further down your agenda, I believe you guys always have 7D, in this case, which is activities being conducted or monitored by commissioners. I think that's an appropriate spot since it's agenda to do any sort of follow-up on tasks, programs, or initiatives that you guys want to follow up on based upon the notes that had previously been taken. And, for Chris or others, if you have questions, I'm available. Feel free to give me a phone call, send me an email. I'm happy to meet in person as well. And if need be, we can always loop in our city attorney if there are any questions related ensuring that you're conducting activities in compliance with state laws.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to make one more note, one more offer. So I take notes, pretty extensive notes for myself, and I actually use a digital notebook, and I can pretty much instantly get a PDF of my notes. So if anyone wants notes from a meeting that I attended, I can actually email you the PDF of my notes at any time very quickly. So for the commissioners that are interested in that. And then also for reviewing old meetings, one of the things that I do often when I'm looking at other agenda items and other meetings I don't attend, the Fact TV actually puts a banner at the bottom of the meetings, like what agenda item we're currently talking about, which makes it really easy to kind of fast forward through the meeting and find out which agenda item they're actually talking about in the moment. It's made it really easy when I'm like going back to Board of Public Works or something and there's a long agenda. So it's just helpful for, if you ever do need to revisit a meeting video, Fact TV actually does make it a little bit easier to navigate through it. Just thought I'd flag that for people in case they haven't seen it.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Chad, thank you for your time. I know this is a tough topic, particularly for us, because we had a way in the past how meeting minutes were done, and we kind of liked what was being done, but we appreciate you bringing us up to speed on why the changes were made. So thank you again for meeting with us and sharing that information for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate the work that all the committee members here on RCC and all the committees throughout the city. There's a lot of folks, much like you, who are volunteering and dedicating time to make the Fitchburg community better. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda item is 4D, the 2025-2029 CIP budget request. Can you give us an update on that, Ben?
Sorry, couldn't unmute myself.
I couldn't read through every one of these. It was long.
Yeah, so I did just add a couple of the CIP sheets from previous years, if anyone was curious at just looking at the history of how the CIP document had changed in regard to some of these stormwater items over the past 3 years. If you did take a look, I'm sure you noticed that there's several projects that are no longer on the list because they've been completed, or we maybe did a study and figured out now maybe there isn't really a good project here to come out of it. But just without having to relive all these past CIP projects, I guess I just wanted to talk more about some of the bigger upcoming ones, and then new projects that we would be requesting, and then just kind of get thoughts from everyone here. Maybe there's some projects that would like to be considered for inclusion here. But just to kind of briefly highlight some of the bigger projects that are upcoming, there's of course the Fitchburg Road Goose Lake Stormwater Improvement Project. So with that one, there's funding in place for I believe it's all in 2024. That'll get bumped, pushed to 25 to be in line with the reconstruction of Fitchburg Road. But that's kind of one of the main ones. Another, I would say, pretty important CIP project on here is the, I can try to find it here. It's the Lacey Seminole Regional Stormwater Project. So this is, I don't think there's a photo of here with this one, but if you're familiar with Sub-Zero Parkway and the big wetland area north of Lacey Road, south of Sub-Zero Parkway, it's an internally drained area. There is no natural outlet, so you get a couple years with a lot of rain, you could potentially end up overtopping that, flooding Lacey Road. Nothing anyone wants. So just with some, potential development in this area in the future that can contribute more volume. Some of these projects that were identified in a past study are looking like probably something that the city should be looking to be constructing, within the next few years. So that would be infiltration basin, that you could pump water out of that wetland and allow it to infiltrate into the ground. And then, of course, just kind of as a last resort, ideally there would be a permanent pumping plan in place, approved by the DNR if the event does occur where the water in that kettle starts to get high and is close to breaching the walls of the kettle and spilling over. It would be very desirable to have an approved plan in place to get that water pumped out.
Ben, who owns that property?
So currently it is owned by Promega.
By who?
Promega.
Promega, okay. So
Yeah.
would Promega have to get permits for this project or DNR permits?
So the city would be working kind of with Promega. So in fact, there's been some meetings in the past, kind of talking about, how big this potential infiltration basin would be, things of that nature. Because the city, you're right, the city would have to either get some sort of permanent easement or purchase land for the actual infiltration basin. So there is some kind of conversations that do need to happen with those other entities. That helps to answer the question.
I mean, do we know if there's any planned development there? I mean, to me, that seemed like would be an ideal area to have a park for people in that area. You have a wetland area there, people can bird watch or do whatever, hike around the quote unquote lake. And it would be a nice amenity there. I don't know if Promega is ever considering donating that to the city or.
I had heard that, maybe there were some conversations regarding donating some of that land. I guess I don't recall the specifics of that or if it ended up going anywhere. But I agree. I mean, that would be kind of an ideal location to, right now it's it seems like a good candidate to kind of do some sort of maybe even like a prairie restoration.
Right, exactly, yes.
And
Yeah.
like have some mowed trails, great bird watching opportunity, potentially things of that nature. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they could-
that would be, I think, a great use for that area.
I mean, it could connect
Um,
right off that existing new bike path that goes there now, or the walking trail that was put in last year.
Right. Yep.
And then I
Yep.
don't know if there could be a connection to that, I don't know if Edgewood is still planning to build their sports complex across the street or what, so.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet on that. I haven't heard anything
Okay.
with that. But moving on, I guess just to the next kind of
Sure.
big project in the CIP here would be flooding north of Domes Marsh. So this is on Crescent Road, where there's been some structures on a couple different occasions actually get flooded. Water overtops the curb and enters their first floor door and drains down through their basement. And the street's been flooded to the point where it's been an issue with getting vehicles through. So this is a project that the city's looking to complete this year, just to increase some flow capacity, get the water moved off of Crescent Road. So those are kind of, I guess, the very near big projects.
What about the flooding on Fitzroy Road under the,
Yes, so that I may have called it the Goose Lake project before, but the Fitzroy Road Goose Lake project, I
Yeah.
believe this current version of the CIP, let's see where it's at here. Yeah, has dollars in it this year, so there's 500,000. So the city did go through the RFP process and are looking to finalize selecting a consultant to complete basically design and permitting of a project here. So that'll occur this year. And then when I go through and do these CIP updates, I'll move some more of these dollars out into 25. And this way, it's kind of ideal if the project to alleviate flooding on Fitzroy could coincide with the Fitzroy Road reconstruction project, which is occurring in 25. So that's the idea there. Wrap up design this year and do construction in 25. So I guess those are the big CIP projects that I see. I guess there is one more. So there's the Uptown Sod Farm or Area H Sod Farm Pond. I think I've discussed this in the past, but it's a large regional basin off of McCoy Road that it would provide water quantity and water quality treatment to future development in the Uptown area. So over by, well, right now it's just a bunch of undeveloped land, but like the Shine building or the Phoenix building off of Lacey Road. So anything that would develop in that existing undeveloped area would be treated by this regional stormwater pond. So that's another one slated for construction this year, just wrapping up some permitting. But as far as projects on the CIP now that we would like to get added, the one that's kind of on my list is some stream bank stabilization. So stabilizing the stream bank through Yarmouth Greenway. We had done some walkthroughs with DNR earlier or later in 2023. We presented this project to the MMSD Hara Winds group, who does adaptive management projects, in hopes that they may provide some grant funding for that project. So that's kind of the one I would like to see added in probably 26. But other than that project, there's some other ones on here that are shown to be later out. So for example, there's rerouting storm sewer on Traceway Drive. So right now there's a storm sewer that just dumps out into Nine Springs Creek. With a project like this, we'd be looking at having that water discharge into the pond first, to reduce some pollutants, get some more peak rate reduction before it would discharge into the creek. So there are some kind of water quality projects in some future years that we may look at moving up. If there aren't any big projects in 2026, for example. This is shown as construction in 28. Maybe that's something that would be moved up. But again, I just wanted to see if there were any project ideas or thoughts that this group may have. They want to discuss something for consideration.
Before we get into those, Ben, just we have a little break in our meeting in terms of the timing. So we're supposed to start our overview for city Fitchburg committees commissions discussion at 7:35, and then it has this item starting at 7 o'clock, and our next item starting at 7:20. But then our old business item starting at 7:50, which is 5 minutes ago. So we have a little break in our agenda timing. So I think we're going to have to probably, push these conversations along to get back on track. I'd estimate we're probably 10 to 15 minutes behind now.
I think that was my fault. I had asked Ben to move the discussion on the staff guide up to 4C so that we could get Chad out sooner. So initially that was.
I did not update the time. Yeah,
That threw me off.
Yeah, so could do some quick math, but I think we're not as far behind as it might look. But yeah, we probably do want to move on to MS4.
Yeah.
I just have two small notes.
Gabrielle.
I just have two small notes for Ben that'll be quick. Number one, the storm sewer on Lyman Lane and Florin Drive. I think you might consider pushing that back to basically the end of the back 5 years, just because the neighbors aren't interested in it. But when that was removed by staff, it was meant to keep on the radar just in case. But I think you could potentially push that back.
Okay.
And then number two, the street leaf sucking machine, whatever that's called.
Oh,
I don't know
sure.
if it's a consideration for adding that in, but I just think it should be on the table.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Well, I guess that's all I had on the topic.
Yep. I just have a question, Gabriella. When you were talking about the leaf vacuum, I thought based on Ben's analysis, because that doesn't include we'd still have to contract for brush pickup. I thought that we suggested we just continue as is.
I think for the near term, yes, but for the CIP, we can always do like the first 5 years are kind of like realistic projects that our financial management plan really plans for in terms of debt financing. And the back 5 years are just like theoretical like projects that we might include consideration. So I think what we could do is put it in the back 5 years just so it's on the table and that discussion doesn't get lost in the documentation of the city. But I don't necessarily think it needs to be in the front 5 years.
Okay, thanks.
Let's move on to item agenda 4E, the review of the MS4 draft 2023 annual report. Ben, if you can kind of give us a quick summary.
Yeah, so the city has a stormwater discharge permit through the DNR. It's called a WIPDES permit, or Wisconsin Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Also, you may hear it be called an MS4 permit or an R216 permit, just some other names you may have heard of it. one of the requirements is to bring the annual report to a public meeting, in case there are any other comments on here. But basically what this is a summary of all these different little items that are required for any MS4 permit to complete each year. So for example, there's public education and outreach and public involvement and participation requirements that each municipality with an MS4 permit has to complete. There's requirements for illicit discharge detection and elimination. So each year, typically it's one of the interns will go out and look at outfalls. So basically where storm pipes are discharging into a creek or into a pond, and make sure there's nothing funny coming out of those that shouldn't be. So this report basically summarizes all of the little requirements of the MS4 permit. Some of this may not be particularly interesting. It's just kind of a lot of numbers on a form, but some things that may be of more particular interest.
And have we ever received any comments back from DNR regarding this on previous submittals?
I have not, and I haven't seen any comments from past reports prior to
Okay.
BB. So, here's kind of an example of stuff you'd find on here. There were 22 construction sites with 1 acre or more of land active at any point during 2023. The city issued 8 erosion control and water management permits for sites greater than 1 acre last year. There were a lot more permits issued. Many of them were less than a year. And then this just kind of summarizes action that was taken. If contractors aren't keeping their site clean, the city has the authority to cite contractors or issue stop work orders. So it kind of summarizes that. I think another thing that folks may be interested here would be salt use. So that's another thing that's documented in here, winter salt use. So each month, there's the total tonnage of salt that was applied in the city limits. And then there is the total gallons of brine that was applied. So again, it's more of documenting what occurred basically stormwater wise within the city over the reporting year. That's really kind of the bulk of the report. For sake of time, I don't know if people are interested in going into the detail here, but did anyone have, or does anyone have questions on this report or anything like that?
I didn't have any questions. That looked good to me.
No questions.
All right. Well, thanks, Ben.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah. I'll get you on to your next subject. So let's move on to item agenda 5A, update on the dark sky ordinance. Kind of excited to hear about this one.
Yeah, well, I don't get too excited, but I do have, I guess, a couple. So if you notice, there was in the staff guide this new process for getting ordinances actually accepted and approved. So what I had done, I had provided Chad and Mayor Julia with basically just a memo explaining all the different benefits of an exterior lighting ordinance, dark sky ordinance, as well as some examples of what other municipalities have for exterior lighting ordinances, from, like, I guess you would say, Fitchburg's peer communities. So I provided Middleton's, Madison's, Monona's, Sun Prairie's, Verona's. They all have exterior lighting ordinances. One thing that was in that stat guide was that the memo should not include draft ordinance language. Now, I did say, the Resource Conservation Commission has draft ordinance language that we've prepared that's available upon request. And actually, just before this meeting, I got an email from Julia, who had asked for that draft language. So I'll be providing the draft language to Julia here. But I think now we've got the ball rolling, and it's kind of picking up here. So I think that's encouraging that.
Well, I'm glad it's got some legs now, so.
We're getting some movement on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was really the main update, to just keep this on your radar, because it'll probably be coming up again as a future agenda item shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update. Let's move on to, if nobody's any other questions for Ben, let's move on to agenda item 5B, spring waterway cleanup and recycling event planning.
All right. So this agenda item, partially just to see who's available for these events. And then I also just wanted to confirm the locations for the waterway cleanup with everyone. Very, very similar to the locations last year, with one change. So the Yarmouth Greenway had been one of the locations in past year, but like I said, when we were doing some investigation of erosion of the stream banks there, kind of noticed that it was looking pretty clean, actually. Not a lot of litter in there. So we shifted a little bit downstream, and rather than the Yarmouth Greenway, it'll be the section of Nine Springs Creek that runs through the Gulf Coast. So just moving a little bit downstream, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot more trash and all sorts of stuff in that little stretch than there is in the Yarmouth Greenway right now. So after this meeting,
isn't the golf course open now?
It is. I did talk with the manager, Dan Larson. He was all for it. He loved the idea. And since the creek is kind of out of the way from the greens, it shouldn't interfere with people playing golf.
My husband and I cleaned along there a couple of years ago before you came on board with the city. I'm not sure that's, if somebody hits a ball screwy, I think that might be kind of dangerous.
Well, I think there's a lot of interest, or a lot of people that would be interested in cleaning that section. I know there's people that use the disc golf course and the golf course that had expressed a desire to kind of clean this area up. So
Good. Then you've got volunteers already. Good. One area that I've noticed is pretty bad is, I think it's considered the Yarmouth Greenway, but it's on the south side of PD. It goes for maybe a block.
Yep. Basically, yeah, the channel that crosses PD, and then you're in the Yarmouth Greenway.
Yeah.
I could see that being a good one. We could certainly add that other location. Um,
I don't mind doing Dunn's Marsh again next year.
Ron, you would like to head up Dunn's Marsh?
Again, yeah, I could do
Okay.
that. Unless somebody else wants it.
And Chris, and were you thinking you would kind of head up the Swan Creek?
Yep, I'll do that one.
And if Kim is still on, I know in the past you've kind of always led the Quarry Hill neighborhood cleanup. Is that something you'll still be able to do?
It depends. If you can tell me what the date is that was chosen, I can let you know if that works for me this year.
Yeah, April 6th.
April 6th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that should work. Yes, that works.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to lead a location? If there is, I mean, I could certainly add the area that Diane was talking about.
Ben, I'll do that area and the Chapel Valley ponds.
Okay, great. Awesome.
What was that area, Diane?
The, what do you, how do you refer to that, Ben?
It might be called the Triverton Greenway.
Okay. It's near Walgreens, Chris.
Yeah.
And then the two ponds for on Chapel Valley, on either side of Chapel Valley, bordering McKee Park or McKee Road.
Yep.
That apparently, I learned from Ben, that feeds into Yarmouth Greenway, and it's not bad. I did it again. I did it twice last year, so it's not terrible. But it needs the stuff we get out of there keeps it out of the Yarmouth Greenway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Well, before I move on here to the recycling event, were there any other questions, comments, concerns regarding the spring waterway cleanup?
Can you, Ben, can you post on the web that, I mean, it doesn't have to be that weekend in April. If other groups would like to organize a cleanup, they should contact you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And is there a landing page on the website for this?
Yeah, I just updated the website late last week, so I'll start really pushing the marketing for it, I guess, if you will.
So Ben, I assume before the date, you'll have those boxes again for us with the gloves and things like that.
Yep. So the city will provide all the gloves, bags, vests, as usual.
Okay.
You might also consider, if we have lightning for a backup date.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll take a look, and maybe it's the 13th. April 13th might be a backup date.
15th?
Well, that's the recycling event.
Yeah, we
actually.
can't do it then.
So it can't be that.
Well, could we do it Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just push it a day.
It's not Easter, is it?
No,
Well,
Easter's
okay.
on the 30th.
Oh, that's right. It's early this year. No other holiday, religious holidays, that Saturday and Sunday. Particularly for a recycling event.
Not that I can see.
Okay.
Looks.
Bless you.
Gesundheit.
Sorry. I couldn't mute fast enough.
All right. Well, then, just with the recycling event, again, April 13th, Civic Campus. Same as usual, only difference, there's no Met drop again this year. Is there anyone interested in volunteering for that event?
For the recycling? Yeah, I'll do it again. I'll do
Okay.
a shredding thing again.
Okay,
I'll help with the shredding.
great.
I'll be the greeter.
Awesome, awesome.
That's Kim.
I'll do the e-waste.
I can be there. I can do whatever you need me to. And at what time are we starting? 7:30?
It starts at 8 a.m. We ask
8 a.m.
everyone to show up by 7:45.
And it goes to 11?
Yes.
And I think
Ben,
last,
could you send around a schedule of that, please?
yes. Yep, I will send a schedule. And I think last time I maybe just sent an email to some of the alders, and I know a couple of them like to participate in that as well. So we'll get them or give them an opportunity to sign up. And I think we should be set with personnel for that.
I'll mention it at council as well.
I'll try to remind you tomorrow, but we should ask Scott too. He helped a couple events ago, and he really had a good time.
All right.
All right, any else discussion on that? Two events? Thanks, Ben, for help pulling us together, and thank you everyone for volunteering your time to support these events. All right, let's move on to agenda item 5C, the planned outreach event update. So maybe this could be something for Chris and Kim. I know, Kim, you got to leave at 8:30, so it's like 15 minutes from now. So I know we have an EV event plan coming soon, right, Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to keep up on notes. So we have the EV event set for the middle of June. I don't have the exact date right in front of me, but I did email it out to everybody here. So you guys should know the date. It's, I believe, the Wednesday,
June 12th.
June 12th.
Yep.
So we have that set. What I did, so I think, that's going to be a co-sponsored event with the library and then also MG&E. So they like that space. We like having it in that space because it gives us a lot of options to do what we want to do. We like to have like a little bit of a session in the meeting room where we go over a topic of choice, which we haven't fully vetted out or decided as of yet. But we will, decide a topic that's hot and that people want to talk about, and also open it up to any other questions people might have in general about EVs before we head out and check out the EV vehicles. So I know that I did send out an email on EV vehicles with connections that you all might have or that you might actually own yourselves. So, you will get invites. I'll share those with MG&E, and then I think he will be sharing a formal invite on, how you should bring your car to the event. So he'll provide a little bit more guidance on that. So the city does have a Ford Lightning. Is that correct, Ben?
So the city's got two lightnings. Sure, we can bring one of them over.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can chat with. Is it Mark and Barry that drive?
Yeah, Mark's got one. We can bring one over. That'd be fine.
That would be nice to have there. Otherwise, I think he has like a contingent of other EV owners. He has a list that he uses and invites EV owners to different events. We couldn't have it. We were hoping to have it in March in the library, but there is an ongoing project going on down there where they're using some of the storage of the basement of the parking area, and so we would have to be doing it outdoors. And although some of the nights right now we could probably do that, it just gives us flexibility if there happens to be rain that night that we can just move it into the garage. So I don't think we need to schedule a rain date for this event, and we can hold it as planned. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or ideas related to that event that we can incorporate?
Chris, do you know if MG&E is going to talk about their home installation charger program? Because we recently used them to put in a home charger for our EV vehicle. We checked around to different people to install it and the cost and everything, and their program ended up being the cheapest, and it works really great. So
yeah, I use the same thing. So I think they could hit on that. I would like to hear kind of what they're trying to do in multifamily complexes as well to provide charging options. So I think that's a topic that we want to hit. and that's one that I know that we've mentioned here before. Anything else people want to share on that event?
No, we can bring a car, so.
Okay. One car or two cars, Ron? Do you have one?
We just have one, the Hyundai
Okay.
Ioniq 5, so.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, so I think that covers that event. For what we would consider, or call maybe our annual event, our goal is to try to do a topic on pollinators, and so what we were looking, typically we look to have our events in the middle of the month on like a Thursday shortly after the 10th of the month. And the reason we do that is so we can advertise the event in the Star. Well, with it being, LOMO or, however we want to call it, No Mo May, coming up, I think we're going to call it LOMO May, right? Is that our game plan, Phil?
Yeah, I'll advertise it as Lomo May. We still have all the Nomo May signs, and I don't want to print a bunch of new ones, but at least in the advertising, I think that would make sense.
Okay. So, I mean, basically what we want to do is talk about pollinators. And so I think rather than having that, around, May 16th or, May 23rd, which would be getting a little late in the month, our target is to try to have that one of the first two Thursdays in May. So either May 2nd or May 9th. And we have a few options for venues, and I wanted to get feedback from the commission on some of those options. So I have talked to Promega, and in the past they have provided their space, their BTC auditorium, as a space to hold a public event, and so that is one of the options for that LOMO event is to have it at Promega. Another option is to have it at the library. We have not looked at the availability of that date as of yet. The other option would be to see if we can reserve the McKee Park Shelter and have it similar to our e-bike event last year, where we have it outdoors and at one of our city parks. So there's three options for venues. Probably our bigger determining factor right now is our speakers. And so the speakers, we do have, there's a guy that's always helped out with all of our waterway cleanups. He does beekeeping, and he is very passionate about pollinators, and said that he would be willing to come in and speak. So we could have a resident come and speak, and then I think we're also looking to get an expert. So Kim actually followed up with someone that spoke to at Sustained Dane last May about pollinators. And Kim, you can share a quick update on what that status is if you're still on.
Yeah, I'm still here. So he is a professor at UW, and I reached out to him. He is away from campus until April 4th, but it sounds like he's still going to be checking messages. And so tomorrow I'm going to try and call his number and leave a voicemail. So that one might just depend on when he would respond in terms of the timing of the event. But I have reached out to him.
So yeah, I think that could be an option, and I think maybe our backup would be to contact the DNR to see if they have somebody as well. So I think we should leave that message with that gentleman, because I think it sounds like he could do a nice job with it. And I listened to some of the Sustained Dane events, and seemed like a pretty good topic. And so I think we're looking at those two options for our speakers. So depending on their availability, and then the availability of those spaces, I don't know if anybody has a strong opinion on any of the locations that I mentioned.
Chris, I really like the McKee Park, but if weather is an issue, maybe you could have a backup I don't know if the library would appreciate having a reservation that's not used, but what about the community center? Is that room available to be reserved?
Ben, I don't know if you know that off the top of your head.
Yeah, so any of the rooms in the community center would be. I don't know what their actual availability is on those dates, but certainly there'd be no reason if they aren't reserved. The group could reserve that.
Okay.
Chris, I could look into that. I used to always reserve the community center for our neighborhood meetings, so I know the process for that.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of interested. Yeah, I mean, we've always had, I mean, every park we've had at McKee, we've had like at least 50 people at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, I like the idea of, reserving that first and then maybe reserving, the community center as a backup just to have a little different space than what we typically have. And, maybe reach out to a little different, group of people. And so, yeah, if you want to reserve that as a backup, I just want to make sure that we, let them know that we're, kind of what we're thinking on it. But, it'll kind of depend on the availability of McKee Park Shelter.
So
Yeah, I was
Chris-
gonna, I guess, one other question.
Yep.
So, sorry to, this may have been discussed before I became a member, but was there anything with O'Brien solar fields where we did pollinator friendly habitat or anything similar that would be useful for a future educational activity? Was there anything in O'Brien that was native prairie, pollinator, anything like that?
Yes. EDF, is that right? EDF Renewables did plant pollinator-friendly plants. My understanding is that last year they were still struggling a bit against a lot of the weeds that came in quicker, but that by this year they were hoping they would really come to dominate the space under the panels. We've talked about educational events there before.
It looks pretty good. They submitted their report, had a bunch of pictures, and I think it looks pretty nice.
Awesome. But yeah, that's definitely something that's a great example, and they do offer educational events there. You just kind of have to reach out and make sure they have somebody available to come down, since it's not staffed most of the time.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking a future educational effort, maybe the following summer I think that would be neat. Maybe have an activity at O'Brien Solar Farms, and it's not only the solar renewable energy, but it's also, the biohabitat and similar. I think that might be a good thing for the public to know about.
Yeah, I do remember.
People feel like that. Would they prefer that over McKee Park? People on the commission?
No, I'm
shelter
thinking
there.
the following year, just getting it out.
Okay.
Beyond this year.
Okay.
Chris, were you envisioning any kind of a hands-on component, like planting anything, or not really within the scope of this event?
No, I mean, I think, I don't know exactly, as we get to know the speakers a little bit more, that, see what they can do from an interactive standpoint and see if there is any part of anything that they're talking about that they could, do a little bit of a demonstration on.
Sure.
So I think that's yet to be determined. I think, as we learn a little bit more about, and engage and find out who our final speakers are going to be, we'll make that part of what we ask about.
Sure.
And then, share that out, because we're not going to have a meeting before this event likely. So we're going to have to, share this out over email.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, and Chris, I was just gonna say that might also depend on the location that we're at. If there's PowerPoint presentation or what kind of presentation they might have. I don't know if McKee, if that's a possibility still to do something like that out there or not. We can figure
Yeah.
that out as we figure out the speakers.
Yeah. So I think that'll come from I agree, Kim. You know, we
Yeah.
should think about that. I'm pretty sure the guy from my neighborhood that's going to speak doesn't need a PowerPoint, but the gentleman from that spoke at Sustained Dane, the professor, you know, may want that or may not necessarily need it.
Yeah.
We've had projections there before. I remember the sun was getting in the way and we needed to put the screen one way or another. So I think it's possible. We just have to be careful where we put the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks, Chris and Kim.
Yep, no problem.
We're right on schedule. Good job, Chris.
Of course.
Actually, we had a schedule. So we can move on to the council update. Gabriella?
Yeah, a few things for you
What
today.
about the staff update?
My update's first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
So
Guys, I gotta jump off. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Kim.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Bye.
So council discussed the police facility the day after our last RCC meeting. And in case those of you have not heard yet, the main motion did fail. The main motion ended up being, after several attempted amendments, the main motion was for the full facility at 49.2 million. That failed on a 2/3 because it required a 2/3 vote. And next steps, which we discussed at the committee of the whole meeting a couple weeks ago, it looks to be that staff is directing the architect to go back and with the construction management firm to try to bring an option that's at the 35 million, because we still have 35 million budgeted. That whole amendment was required because the proposed design was above the budgeted amount. So there's some work happening amongst the architects to try to bring a new design. That being said, me and other members of the council were very clear that the sustainability features were a priority. I would say that my impression is that a majority of the council sees the sustainability features as a priority, and that any reduction in budget should not eliminate those features from both an environmental perspective, but also from a cost savings perspective operationally. So we will see where it lands, but I just wanted to clarify that it seems to be that the council is still cares very much about maintaining the sustainability features with whatever we move forward.
Gabriella,
Yeah.
are we married to that architect? I mean, why aren't we opening it to other architects to get other different ideas?
It's a good question. I mean, we went out to RFP a long time ago and selected the architect. I think it would be, at this point, the plan is to just continue with the architect as is. It's a good question, but I just don't think it has been considered. So I can't say any more than that, but I could certainly ask the administrator and see.
I mean, to me, it seems like it would be concerning. You jump from 35 to 50 million. Why did that happen? You know, I know architects and engineering say, you know, give us more work, we'll design it and we'll build it for you. So
yeah, the answer, and that answer did come out in one of the committee of the whole meetings. Basically, they didn't design the building to the budget. They designed the building to the based on conversations with the police department about their wants and needs. So it was a design based budget. It was not a money based design. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, that's interesting.
yeah, it's definitely interesting, the perspective of how it came about. I will also say that estimating the design of the building right now with construction costs is just really challenging. So I think to a certain extent they didn't know that they were designing a $9 million building until it got closer to being where we were. So it was it was an unfortunate process. So I think the majority of the council wants to move something forward this year as soon as possible, but there's going to be a pause.
Yeah. I tried to stay awake as long as I could. I fell asleep, but you guys did a great job managing the crowd. The mayor did a great job. Everybody on the council did a good job too. So
appreciate that. Any other questions about the police facility before? Okay. Next, another big thing is the referendum. Council has been discussing a potential referendum going to the voters for the August election August of this year. And to that end, we have put together a community survey, and that should have hit your mailbox last week. I think it was targeted around March 6th. So hopefully you saw a mailing from City of Fitchburg with a community survey. That is due March 22nd. And will prefer to be considered by the council. So you can either mail that back or you can enter the code you have online to fill out the survey. I would encourage the commissioners to fill that out and express whatever you think is important. The council has made it clear that from the council's perspective, we want to see a referendum that supports the city broadly and outside of just what some cities choose to do is just focus on public safety staffing. And we've decided that we would like the referendum to be more broadly supporting the city, which would include public safety. But the community survey will help inform the decision from the council. So encourage you guys to fill that out. And I also encourage you, as leaders in your community, to share it with your networks and other people in Fitchburg to encourage them to take a look and fill it out. Also, if there's 2 people in your household, you can request a second code. So both people can fill out the survey. So if you want to do that, just email the clerk and she can provide you with another code for the second person in your household to fill out.
Oh, okay, well, that's good to know, because I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on the referendum? Great. Third thing, at the Plan Commission meeting last time, we approved a conditional use permit for Sunnyside Solar Farm, which is on Wayland Road. And it's a big solar farm. It's 20 megawatts, which is the same as O'Brien Solar Farm. And this is actually the company that built the O'Brien Solar Farm. And one of the interesting elements of this is that it's going to have battery storage on site. So they can provide power in the evening hours off without sunlight. So that's the first solar facility we've seen in the city to date that includes battery storage. I thought that was pretty notable. And there were a lot of concerns by the neighbors, you might imagine, and we tried to address some of those. But interesting thing about state statute conditional use permits is that agricultural zoning, which is where a lot of these solar farms go, permits solar farms as a conditional use, which means that when the Plan Commission takes a look at conditional use permits, we actually have a limited ability to reject that because it's within the purview of the zoning code. So when a solar farm comes for a conditional use permit, it's actually quite difficult for us to say no. And it has to do with state statute. So it's just an interesting thing when it comes forward. Sometimes people are upset about it. And sometimes I think there's even concerns about whether or not those farms are going in places that we should be developing new homes. And that's something that we have a limited ability to influence. So just an interesting note. We're definitely looking at our updating zoning potentially in the future, but that's not imminent.
Gabriella, will it be a tracking panels? And will there be pollinator plants underneath?
Yes, they will. I'm fairly certain they will be tracking, and my understanding is they are including pollinators or I think they're also considering grazing. Like there was one other solar farm recently that was going to do some animal grazing underneath. So my understanding was that they hadn't decided exactly what they're going to do, but the land will be used functionally as one of those uses.
Gabriella and everybody, just so everybody knows, a solar farm in Wisconsin will produce about 5 times more energy than if corn was grown at the site and converted to biodiesel or ethanol. So solar in an agricultural area is significantly more efficient at creating useful energy than current methods. Just a perspective.
And that's all year long.
What's that?
And that's all year long.
That's on an annual basis, yes. So if you add up all of the megawatt hours produced at a solar farm, and then if you calculate how much ethanol would be produced at the same caloric or megawatt chemical value, the solar wins hands down.
That's fascinating. Thank you for that. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we can move on to now item 7, staff and commissioner updates. 7A, solid waste, Ben.
All right, so aside from incorporating some of our discussion and the outcomes of that, making some changes to the RFP document to reflect what was discussed as far as unlimited recycling and so forth. There will be a minor route collection change. So there's about 100 properties that are currently getting curbside collection on Thursday that will be switched to Monday collection starting April 1st. So if you are one of those properties, you will be getting a letter in the mail, basically outlining the change. So this was just a request that Pelletary had, just so they could pick up some of their routes more efficiently. Their Thursday route has a lot of growth in it, so that's where Terabessa is. So Thursday was getting, more and more homes. So to balance it out, they switched some of those ones over to Monday. So that's kind of the solid waste update.
And did you discuss with the public works director closing the gates at the drop-off site?
I did not. I apologize, Diane.
I have one interesting note. Last Saturday or Saturday before last, my son and I went to pick up mulch at the facility there on a Saturday, and I checked the bins, the cardboard waste bins. Most of them were all empty. We went back on Sunday morning. Every one of them was filled and overflowing. One day, all those bins were filled up. I don't know when it happened, but it happened in one day.
Yeah,
And on a weekend.
Yep.
I was amazed.
It's an astounding amount of cardboard.
Yeah.
Ron, did you notice whether most of the cardboard was collapsed?
Yeah, most of it was collapsed.
So there is
Actually, also one guy there going through the metal recycling thing, pulling things out to repurpose them. Which
Oh,
I
good
thought,
for him.
so, yeah, I was surprised how quickly they filled up over the weekend.
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
Also, Ben, you were going to look into possibility of a grant from the county for us recycling other people's cardboard?
Yeah, so actually Phil did a little bit of legwork on that. And we didn't come up with any grant opportunities, or at least nothing that really seemed to fit what the current situation is.
Nothing that looked promising.
No.
All right, thanks, Ben. We can move on to item 7B then. Any updates on the stormwater?
Yeah, so city did select a consultant in coordination with the town of Verona for the Fitchburg Road Goose Lake Stormwater Improvements Project. We just kind of had a little scoping meeting the other week, so they're kind of finalizing a revised scope. At which point we'll bring that through the council process for approval and turn them loose on it and try to get started as possible.
And do we have an MOU with Town of Verona for the stormwater project? I know we just approved one for the.
Yeah, there
Then-
will be one. Yep,
Okay.
there will be one. Yep,
Hey, Ben, does that flow into Badger Mill Creek?
it does.
Is there a way that maybe that effluent, or not effluent, but the extra water could be used to augment flow that's going to be taken out of Badger Mill Creek?
Well, that's what we're going to try to do.
I'm thinking
So-
about that.
So, one of the concerns was the quality of the water coming from Fitchburg Road and Goose Lake. It's going to be warm, first of all,
Right. Yeah.
which is not great for trout.
Right.
Which that's really kind of the priority for a lot of the groups. Friends.
Isn't the effluent warm coming out too?
Sorry, what was that?
Isn't the effluent warm coming from the MSD?
I don't remember exactly what the temperature is, but it's, I think it's maybe in the high 50s. It would be cooler than what would likely be coming off of Goose Lake and the adjacent wetlands. And it was at least cool enough to sustain a small trout population from what I understand from the fisheries folks that have done some work in that area. So rather than trying to just move surface water out in the creek, we are going to explore the potential to control the level of some of those adjacent wetlands through a groundwater outlet. So we've got to do some groundwater testing, to make sure this would be feasible. But ideally, you could use cool, cleaner groundwater and discharge that into the creek. And that water, is kind of tied to the lake levels, or at least that's the theory. We could control the level of Goose Lake and some of those adjacent wetlands through a groundwater outlet rather than a surface water outlet. So that's what we're going to try to explore right off the bat. Get some groundwater models installed.
Would that be re-injecting water from Goose Lake into the groundwater?
No, so it would be kind of like putting some agricultural drain tile in the shallows of Goose Lake. So kind of where, not necessarily where there's surface water, but, just kind of around somewhat of the perimeter of the lake, and basically have like a control structure tied into those drain tiles, and then control the lake level through that structure, but the water would be coming from the ground rather than from the surface.
Okay.
So we got to do some investigation and see if it's feasible. But if it seems like it is, it could be a good win-win for Creek and then Fitzrona Road as well. So that's kind of we're hoping that could work out and kind of be a good thing for the whole area. But
It would be. Thanks.
it'd be cool. Some other just kind of general stuff. City completed their kind of plant value is what it's called. So, the assets that were purchased or installed through 2023. I just added this on here because it was a large number. So there's over $6 million of stormwater related infrastructure added in 2023, which seems to be the most since the city started taking records of it. So it's a big, just kind of reflects how much development and how many projects there were last year, with kind of Lacey Road being a major project, and Cyene Road, as well as Terravessa, some of the other plats that have continued to develop. And then just some other general project updates, moving things along on the Crescent Road stormwater improvements project, the TMDL water quality analysis, and Farm Regional Pond. So these are all projects that we're looking to get wrapped up this year, and seem to be on track for that thus far. And then finally, we did have prescribed burns. Some folks noticed there were 5 areas that were burned last week. So these are just the stormwater management facilities. Been doing more of that to try to eliminate some of the invasives and cool season grasses, and promote more of the wildflowers and native grasses that we would like to see there. So we had about 5 last week, and then there'll be some more this fall.
Great.
And I have a couple questions. Your annual report about stormwater talks about $4,500 advertising in the Star. What exactly? I mean, what is it you're advertising?
So, for example, the Saltwise graphic that was added into the Star. That's where that came from.
Then along the lines of this Saltwise, I don't know if we're going to get snow. Maybe next week we will. But what's the plan for removing those signs? At least the ones in my area won't be able to be reused. So are everybody that put them out is bringing them back in, or what's your plan?
Yeah, so I if I take the signs out, it's going to snow the next day. But I was thinking the same thing about, geez, maybe we can take these out. We'll have someone in public just go by.
I think we can leave them in until the end of the month because it is March. But then, do you want the people who put them out to bring them back in, or what would you like done?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's I'll leave it up to you if you wanna hold on to it because you think you might put it out next year. Then that sounds.
I've noticed that some dogs like to lift their legs on those signs.
Gotcha. All right. Well, maybe if you want to bring it in, you could certainly do that as well. Or if it's eaten up and not really usable, then I guess it could just be recycled.
So in other words, if we put the sign out, you would like us to bring it back in. You're not, right?
Oh,
so we're all on the same page.
Oh, we can. I mean, we can pick it up if you'd like. But I was just thinking, if you wanna reuse it. Otherwise, don't worry about it. We do have all the locations marked, so we know where they all are.
And then along those lines, we weren't here the Saturday where we apparently had ice instead of rain or snow, but we were here the next day, and I think that our campaign. I mean, all those people that you sent letters to, the sidewalks were white with salt. I mean, it was so discouraging, and even some that hadn't had salt before. I don't know if the governor has signed that bill, but if and when he does, are you okay, or do you need to talk to the mayor, or how can we move forward with that ordinance amendment?
Yeah, so again, I would write a memo to the mayor and Chad outlining things. And you're right. I guess I should have included that in my update, but it did pass through the state assembly. So it just needs a signature from the governor. And for those maybe not familiar, it's the Saltwise liability bill. So if a snow removal contractor has taken Saltwise certification classes, the company that hires them has reduced liability if there's some kind of a slip and fall at their site. So it's, to really promote smarter use of salt and getting rid of the idea of, wow, we just got to dump as much salt here so no one slips and falls. But yeah, if that does get signed by the governor, my plan would be to kind of publicize that, maybe send out postcards, just so people know that, hey, there's a new option or a new program for snow removal companies, and maybe consider working with a Saltwise certified contractor. So that'd be kind of my plan if and when that bill is signed.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of the education program because over the Pick and Save area, the shopping, the stores around there, when we had the cold weather afterwards, and a couple of weeks ago, that area was blanketed in salt. You were walking on pure salt. And we had to walk our dog through Tabby and Jack's. I complained to the owner, told him what he could do, made recommendations. A week later, that same amount of salt was still there.
Ron, it's
They
a
don't even
woman.
listen to you.
It's a
That's kind
woman.
of how I feel with the letters that. we've
Yeah,
sent.
they don't listen to you.
Ron, it's a woman who owns Tabby and Jack. So if you talk to a man, he was just an employee.
Well, I told him, he said, well, we'll pass it on. I said, my dog has to walk through this salt to get inside your store. And then I went over to Cold Stove Creamery, said the same things to them. Of course, it's 2 young kids, and nothing ever happened.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit. We need to hit this harder.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I
Gabriella?
do a time check? It's 8:53.
I had one
What was
quick
that?
comment for Ben. Just for the future, Ben, for your information, my colleague Steve Lohide is doing research on solar farms with the Department of Energy on how the water balance is impacted. So he's investigating if stormwater management and infiltration is improved on solar sites. So we might be able to have a co-benefit in the future that's documented with scientific research being done here. Potentially another benefit of properly managed solar farms in terms of infiltration and stormwater management.
Well, that would be really cool, because right now, I mean, that's what all these stormwater management plans are banking on, is that you're taking an agricultural land use and turning it into a prairie, and that's how they're meeting their whole stormwater, all the stormwater requirements. So it's kind of critical that what's happening is actually what was intended. So I'd be definitely interested in learning some more about that.
I will reach out to him and
Right.
ask him if and when he's ready to share any research findings.
That would be great. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Ben. And move on to Phil now. Item 7C, sustainability.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it real quick. I didn't get anything to Ben before he published the agenda, but I have just a couple quick updates. Chad mentioned I'm working on the grants for the public police service facility, working with the design team on that. The biggest thing of note was that the Office of Energy Innovation's Energy Innovation Grant Program, that's how we funded our energy planning process with Slipstream and some other Dane County communities a few years ago. Given the delay in design completion, we don't really have the data we need for that one, so we're going to push that off to next year and try to get that EIGP grant next year in 2025 instead. Looking at some other things, we're working with some focus on energy designers on design assistance and some other options. We'll be definitely putting in for some of the rebates available through the Inflation Reduction Act and potentially also the bipartisan infrastructure law, if anything applies. This is a few months old by now, but I'm not sure if we ever updated it. We had talked about the cracking sign on that had information on the geothermal system for the public. Ben was getting some signs replaced in general last year, so we included that. There's now a nice, fresh new sign showing how the geothermal system works at the library, so that's kind of nice. Of course, as soon as we got that done, we noticed the other sign is just starting to crack too, so that'll be a project in the next year or two. Be going to the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference again in April in Dubuque. Just sharing that now because we won't have an April meeting, so I'll hopefully have some interesting things to share as a follow-up from that in May. There were some discussion last month about the Middleton Sustainability Awards and whether that's something that RCC would want to try to adopt in Fitchburg. Definitely something that could be added to a future meeting as further discussion. I got almost immediately after that meeting Rick Eilertson. If everybody doesn't know him, he's a former environmental engineer with Fitchburg. He's now living out in Middleton, and he's on their sustainability committee, but keeps up with what Fitchburg's doing. He reached out to me and said he was actually involved in creating the plaques for those sustainability awards. So they took trees that had been that were coming down, ash trees in Middleton anyway, so they weren't cutting any new lumber, but he worked with somebody else to create those plaques. He didn't have a good sense of the timing. He thought that it was maybe a few dozen hours that was put into that in the first year or two, and he was hoping that in future years it would take less time. Still waiting to hear back from their sustainability specialist to see how that time is divided up between her and the sustainability committee. But I know there wasn't a resolution on whether that's something that the RCC wanted to look into, or that was just kind of another thing to tack on that maybe was going to be too much, but certainly could bring it back on a future agenda if folks are interested. But yeah, the short version is it definitely takes some time for both staff and committee. And they either give out a plaque, or members can also choose to receive a $50 gift card from Middleton Chamber instead.
Bill, is there any update on sustainability award? You were going to look into that?
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
The sustainability award? We talked about that last time.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that is the Middleton Sustainability Award from the Sustainability Committee.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed the connection there.
Gabriella was talking about the Sunnyside Solar, so I don't need to add much there. But I've been talking with them about further opportunities for renewable energy rider contracts like we got with O'Brien. It doesn't sound like this will be that. I was also asking if there's a way to use this, because it is a reliable energy source. If we can use this as a way to fix or even lower bills for our energy burden residents. There's not a resolution on that yet. They're still talking about what the nature of this will be. One of the tensions is that, a lot of their customers are trying to increase their renewable percentage, but MG&E also has their renewable goals to hit, and so only one party can really claim it technically. So that's always a little bit of a struggle. Do they want to add it to their renewable portfolio, or let us add it to ours? But we're discussing that and talking about that for future solar arrays as well. Haven't gotten around to the Lomo May push, but that'll happen soon. So hopefully this week, I'll submit a memo to Chad and the mayor and see how they want to proceed this year, and then hopefully by early April can start advertising that. And the last thing is, if you've ever done, this isn't really Fitchburg, but it seems worth noting, if you've ever done the Earth Day event that the Nelson Institute hosts at Monona Terrace, this year they're switching it up a bit. They're doing a week, an Earth Fest from April 19 to April 26. There will be a variety of in-person and online events. So they're not doing a single day thing at the terrace anymore. They're kind of spreading it out. I don't think they've shared many details yet, but I think it'll make it easier for people to participate. It means you can't just take one day off and go absorb it all like I really like to do. But hopefully it's easier for people to catch the bits that are relevant to them. So a fun way to celebrate Earth Week is look for those things and hang out with a bunch of UW and other environmental sphere folks. That's everything I've got.
I have one more question for Ben. Did you, thinking ahead to the e-cycle event, did you order more idling reduction signs?
No, I will do that. I'll make sure we get them in before the event.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Phil. All right, item 7D, activities being conducted or monitored by commissioners. I just want Diane on the Fitchburg Star. Evidently my article didn't get in. I guess the mayor's overrode mine, so that makes room for hers. So looks like I'll be doing mine in May. You're going to be giving one in April, and then Andy said he could do one in June on pollinators. So
On pollinators?
yeah.
That's actually what my article is about, so he might want to rethink that.
Okay. I'll make sure.
Well, you can wait till he reads it. Maybe he wants to expand on it.
Okay. All right. I'll have him coordinate with you then. So then we probably would have to look for something different in June. So I'll get with Andy on that and see what we can do. So.
Okay, then beyond June, we don't have anybody signed up beyond that.
Right.
So maybe you can talk
I have
about
the
that.
ideas for another article for the next couple of months. Let Andrew know. Anything else? If not, we can adjourn the meeting. It's 9:02. I want to thank everyone. The RCC meeting concludes at 9:02 p.m. Thank you, everyone.